in that sort of a situation, would you really go, oh, fuck it. Oh no, the boat is sinking. I haven't even checked if the lifeboats work. Fuck it. Let's just get in it. Oh no, somebody's drilled holes in it.
Well, I mean, you can kind of understand where they're coming from. I mean, don't you ever have moments where you just want to get out of your clothes as soon as possible?
Yeah, but there's air outside when I do it.
And yeah, so at this point, a side door opens in the Apple store. And
they get a virtual reality tour of the solar system.
Yeah, which is nowhere near to scale.
No, it's terrible. Yeah, it is like something from Windows 98. Awful.
Hello and welcome to another exciting edition of Trolling with Logic, the podcast where we review bad movies, good movies, smack things that we need to have smacked, and that's one of these episodes.
That sounded very BDSM, but carry on.
Yeah. I think this film's had an effect on you, Nathan. You're struggling for words at the moment.
You just sound like you want to dish out some punishment today.
I'm just trying to mix up the intro because I think the intro, every time I say the same intro, it sounds more cheesy every time I say it. So
no, it's cool. You go for it. Sounds good.
Yeah, we're reviewing a movie called Skittles in Space,
also called Mission to Don Cheadles Tent.
Yeah, Mission to Mars. It sounds like the title is a nice generic sounding, innocent sounding title, but this movie threw me for a loop because I went into it fresh because I had never seen it before.
Yeah, I remember seeing it I didn't see it in the cinema. I saw it on DVD a few years later because I used to rent out a lot of DVDs from Blockbuster, and it was just there used to be a period where just nothing good would come out on DVD, so you would go to the further away shelves to see the movies that would just cost like £2 to rent out for a month or something. And that was one of them, and I decided to give this a go, along with its counterpart, the well-known Red Planet movie, which, that should be mentioned because it was the year 2000 and there was 2 Mars movies released months after each other. I think the studios got into competition with each other over that, and basically, both movies they're terrible, to put it lightly.
It's a theme that the Asylum have kept going with their films, trying to release them before the main film. I think that's where they got their idea from. You know how there's been a few of these. This was like 2012, and then there was another one that came out in the same year as well. Same kind of disaster film, different studio. And then the Asylum, of course, have now done it. So every single time a big blockbuster like disaster film comes out, the Asylum will bring one out too. Amazing series. We need to review one of them one of these days. Definitely.
Yeah, definitely.
Bloodstorm, Nazis at the center of the earth. I will keep pressing the point.
Yeah, I've seen that. It's great. It's not as good as it's not as good as Iron Sky though.
Well, anyway.
Probably the strangest thing with this film is when you read the details on paper before you watch it, you think this could actually be fairly watchable and enjoyable sci-fi movie. The director's Brian De Palmas. It's got Don Cheadle, Tim Robbins, Gary Sinise, and the score's done by Enrico Morricone, who done many classic scores. And the thing is, and nothing works. It's like they all turned up and no one, that was it. Everyone just turned up and got their paychecks and went home. It's kind of a zero effort film in every respect.
Yeah. I mean, the reviews, if you look on IMDb as well, are just what the fuck? Some people are singing its praises, saying it's like, it is a thinking person's sci-fi. I'm like, yeah, it's a sci-fi for somebody who's thinking about something completely different when they watch it. It's just terrible.
Yeah, because there was one of our commenters pointed, well, and this is usually a defense you get of these films, well, it's, just a kind of, it's not meant to be, because I know we're going to get heavily into the science of it, and it's, the excuse people go, oh, you're not meant to think of it that deeply.
It's a sci-fi.
So, yeah, it's like, I think this commenter, I'm not slagging him off, but he just said, oh, it's not a peer-reviewed science, but just don't take it so seriously.
I know, but they've got to get something right.
You can ignore this, but this whole film is set up and the characters are meant to be scientists, and it's sort of based in the real world. And when all that happens and all the errors just keep accumulating, it's difficult to kind of not notice this after a while. If it's logical and consistent within its own world, you can overlook. That's how we're able to watch Star Wars and enjoy. But with this, it's not logical and consistent within its own world.
No, because it's trying to do science. It is trying to do science at various different points. It's trying to deal with themes of space. And if it's trying to deal with themes of space, it's at least got to get basic physics right. And it doesn't even do that. It's terrible. Anyway, Roundtable. Nathan, what do you
Nathan,
want
you're
to
usually... All right, that's okay. I was going to say, Nathan, you're the one that usually runs us through the plot, so I think we can get to the plot now.
Okay, so it's the year 2020, and it starts out in a place called Dickinson, Texas. I don't know if that's a real place or not, but yeah, there's a party going on right before the launch to Mars, and you kind of get an overview of the main cast of characters. There's Tim Robbins, who plays a guy called Woody Blake, the commander of the mission. And we have Don Cheadle as character Luke Graham, family man who's going into space. And then Woody Blake's wife, Terry Fisher, played by Connie Nielsen. And then, of course, you get the dramatic entrance of Gary Sinise as Jim McConnell. And Gary Sinise is kind of the typical tortured working man scientist. And
yeah, he's meant to be the kind of protagonist that we're meant to identify with, I think.
Because his wife died and he went through some psychological problems, and so he was pulled from his mission, and it was given to his friend Luke instead. And they go into some expository heavy dialogue that really wouldn't happen in real life, but we got to know the story. So they have this weird dialogue that would be weird in real life if they were really talking that way.
Yeah, at a barbecue, socializing, talking like this.
Everything is normal, isn't it? It's like it's meant to be in the future, but everything is normal apart from whoever drives up that like futuristic looking ish car that sounds like it's got a bank of hairdryers in it. And then that's like the only future. That's the only thing saying, "Oh, we're in the future," and then everything else is just normal.
They tried to make some explanatory notes here and there, like when Luke tells Woody, "Oh, hey, your car belongs in a museum."
And he's got a standard, like, what was that? It was some sort of a sports car, wasn't it? A convertible.
Internal combustion, baby. Internal combustion. Oh, yeah. And so yeah, they then the next scene after that, they're on Mars, and Jim McConnell and Woody and Terry are back orbiting Earth, monitoring the mission from the World Space Station. So apparently in this world, the Earth has kind of come together and created a world space station. So there's no more of this international conflict over who gets where first. So they kind of try to go for the United Earth theme, kind of the...
Yeah, did you notice on that space station, it's got that kind of a ring for centrifugal gravity simulation. But when they're actually walking along that ring, in the distance you see like a bit that's curved up, but the rest of it is entirely flat. They didn't even bother to make it look as if they were actually walking around the inside of that big ring, because they realised that presumably it'd be too expensive. So everything is flat, apart from one kind of picture in the distance where it's kind of going upwards a little bit. That annoyed me as well.
Yeah, that's tiny details compared to what's going to come later.
Oh, and I know, but from that very point onwards, things were irking me big time.
Yeah, so the first big what the fuck moment comes when they get some kind of, or they see a geothermal column and they rule out volcanic eruption as the cause of the extrusion they see. And so one of the guys, Phil, who Jen refers to as Eyebrows Man.
Yeah, Eyebrows Man.
He's like, there can't be ice. The only other thing it could be is ice, but there can't be ice in this latitude unless... And then they all realize that there's water there or something.
Yeah, because they didn't even look and they go, "Oh, it's shiny. It must be water," without even checking. They're like, "What?" Yeah,
so they go out to the location, and this weird living tornado thing that's kind of like a cross between the dune worm and the smoke monster from Lost kind of pops out of the ground or pops out of the top of a mountain and eats them.
And vacuums them all up, doesn't it? Shreds them.
I did like the sequence of the guy spinning around so fast that he just liquidates.
But it's set up this whole sort of thing. It's like, this is what you can expect in the rest of the movie. It's like, oh, brilliant. So we're going to have some really kind of cool monsters, and there might be some interesting action sequences and some suspense.
No, you can't deny that. No, basically no.
That's the only cool thing that's happening in this movie. If you want anything else.
Yes, that's about the movie peak there, and then it's just all downhill after this.
Yeah, because you could go anywhere from there. It could be anything. And there's like a mystery set up, but then the movie takes away your sense of curiosity and makes you hate yourself for watching it.
Yeah, put it mildly. So yeah, I think after that's when they launch the rescue mission, isn't it?
Yeah, it's all very quick too. It's all very rapid. They decide to launch this thing. Well, I mean, there is a time element involved, and it is time sensitive, but the movie kind of takes leaps and bounds with getting to the next plot element to move the plot along.
And it's one problem I had, and is Gary Sinise actually going on the rescue mission, where I think it's blatantly obvious he's still not got over his wife's death, and for whatever reason they send him on this deep space mission for 6 months in close quarters with people, with a husband and wife next to him, which I don't think that's going to help his healing too much. And I don't think he should.
Explain that though. Did they even properly explain how she died, or what significance it had to anything in the film at all? Yeah.
Well, the only reference they had to how she died was that she wasted away in front of his eyes. So that could mean anything. That could mean cancer. That could mean she was like
MS.
She contracted some kind of space disease, or it could mean that she was in a sarlacc. You know.
But either way, if it was a kind of slow, lingering death, it's going to take. It'll be. I don't think they would rush to send this guy on a mission to Mars.
No.
The only justification they had was that he wrote all the Mars missions, apparently all by himself. Like he wrote the book on Mars, they said. And
no one else works at NASA that would know anything about this.
No.
It would just be Gary Sinise alone. That's the only guy that they can. It's like the old Star Trek thing that even when they're right next to Earth, they're the only ship nearby in the heart of the Federation.
Yeah, but it's like they deliberately sent him there because they went, right, guys, we need someone who's got nothing at all to lose. So in case they get in a shitty situation, he'll sacrifice himself. And then, like, he doesn't. And then you're like, why didn't, there was plenty of opportunity for him to kill himself throughout the entire journey. And then it's just all set up for that ending. It's all there for that ending, which we'll get to later on anyway.
I mean, it would have been probably better writing just have him as someone who's always wanted to get married, but he gave it up for his career. That would have kind of served the character better and would have made more sense that NASA could send him on this bloody mission.
Yeah, and it's at this point, while he's on the recovery mission, that the movie gives away what it's going to be about, because he's watching the video, the home video of. It's weird. He's watching a home video of a home video on the monitor there, and so it's like 2 layers of distortion going on. But his wife in that video that he's watching is talking about how life reaches out to life and the universe is connected. And so there's our first big clue that, there's going to be aliens in this, isn't there? Because she's the only one who apparently in that whole group, she's the only one who believed that there were aliens on Mars or something, apparently.
I'm trying to remember, was his wife meant to go on the mission with them?
Yeah, she was, because they said at the very beginning at that party that the mission belonged to both of them, and they trained for 12 years for it.
Yeah, so I mean, it just seems to add up that this guy just shouldn't be going on the mission. He's in no fit state of mind. I mean, that his wife was meant to be going, but instead she died a slow, horrible, painful death, and yeah, they're going to send him out with another husband and wife.
And actually, I should mention that this actually isn't the first clue that the tornado monster has an alien origin to it. Because in that early scene where the 3 Mars mission's astronauts are eaten, there's an aerial view of a space Buddha.
So yeah, Is it? Yeah, it's on. It's while they're in deep space. So we get to, as Jen likes to mention, the Skittles scene.
Yeah, with Eyebrows Man.
Yep.
With Eyebrows Man fiddling with the Skittles, which for somehow, now, if anyone would like to explain to me how this would possibly work, I'd be really impressed. But he somehow manages to make a 3-dimensional rotating DNA strand out of Skittles. Now, where's the centre of mass to enable something to rotate around it, for starters? And then he comes in and he goes, "Oh, I've just taken 2 of your Skittles. What is it now? Oh no, it's not my perfect woman anymore. It's a frog." And you're like, for fuck's sake.
You know what they were trying?
Better?
You know what they were trying to do there? They were trying to make Eyebrows Man look like a biological genius, because he can identify the species just by looking at the DNA, the way the DNA is set up.
Yeah, but you can't tell that dead people can't fucking bury themselves, can you?
We're getting to that too. So, that's the other question I had. It's the form he's making with his rotating Skittles is just a generic DNA strand. So how is it that that's supposed to represent the ideal woman? It's just a DNA strand.
Essentially, as I understand, the only way you can tell looking at a DNA strand what it is just by comparison with other things and knowing something else that's been mapped.
Maybe he just meant his ideal woman was sweet and freely rotatable in space.
Yeah. Hey, if only the Human Genome Project, the people who worked on that, knew that all they needed was Skittles to map out the human genome, they could have saved billions of dollars.
Yep, get on the phone to Craig Venter right away. So,
your perfect woman, taste the rainbow.
Yeah, because on TV, not so long ago, there was a program with David Attenborough, and he showed the actual folders where the human genome was mapped out, and it takes up a vast amount of space, just the printed form of it. And so, yeah, to think that a bag of Skittles can do the job is just stretching it ever so slightly.
Also, in space, right, isn't Skittles really properly fucking dangerous if you just let them fly around in your spaceship? Isn't that what probably was those micrometeorites? It was just someone who put a bag of Skittles outside.
I was about to mention that. And do you notice how much junk food they eat? They drink Dr. Pepper and M&Ms and Skittles. And
yeah. Not at all brand advertising, by the way. Not at all. No.
Yeah, anyway, the DNA information in a single individual human takes up the amount of books in the New York City Public Library. So not going to get a picture of the ideal woman from a bag of
Well,
Skittles.
you would if your simple woman was sweet and simple. There you go. But yeah, I mean, it just, Eyebrows Man, he should have died early on, and he didn't, and it was so frustrating.
So yeah, let's get to the burial site that they discover. So they connect up with the SEMA satellite, which they need to use to figure out whether or not they can even land on Mars, because they got to figure out radiation levels, and they got to figure out whether the dust storm on the planet is spreading before they can land. And so they hook up with that satellite, get the info, get the feed from the overhead view of the Mars One landing site, where Luke, the only survivor of the first mission, apparently headed. I guess did they just assume that he headed there, or did they somehow find out some other way that he was there?
Reasons. I think it was reasons.
Yeah, they find the 3 burial mounds, and Eyebrows Man goes, "Hey, look, there's only 3 graves. That means that Luke's still alive, because apparently when you die, you can bury yourself."
And I just want to go back to the dust storms, and it's actually well known that you do get dust storms on Mars, but the impact that a dust storm on Mars would have on you at its strongest would be being tickled with by a feather.
Oh yeah, because there's no atmosphere on Mars.
There's 6 millibars of air pressure there, and there's 1,013 on Earth. That's why we have quite severe storms here.
Mm-hmm. And that's actually one of the very few things that the Martian movie had to compromise on in order to establish its plot. So it had to take that same liberty, but it doesn't. But the Martian doesn't take nearly as many liberties as
it takes just enough so you can carry on enjoying the story. Yeah, and so I think this is when they kind of and this is when they start to plan how to land on the planet, which sounds quite bizarre that they didn't leave with a plan in place for this.
Yeah, they had to rush it.
Even then, you think on a united Earth, they could get loads of mathematicians and physicists together to calculate it all out for them.
Yeah, they had the, what,
Or is it just
6
that they
months
rely
on
on
the
Gary
way there as
Sinise?
well?
Or do they just rely on Gary Sinise so much that's, well, he'll figure it out along the way?
Well,
Just give him a notepad and a pencil and he'll do it for us as we're going. And also they had 6 months getting there, so surely someone on Earth could have figured it all out for them in advance. But yeah, that's...
Yeah, but then they get hit by micrometeoroids that
Out
are
of fucking nowhere.
Yeah, because I don't know if that's one of those space travel contingencies that nobody can really prepare adequately for, but it seems, I don't know, can micrometeoroids kind of just penetrate through NASA's spaceship that's designed to travel to Mars? Aren't they built a little bit more stronger than that?
I think they would be, yeah. I mean, you can't plan for it. I think there will be some that you just couldn't. But I think it's one of these probability things. It's on the lower end of probability. I mean, someone correct me if I'm wrong about that, but I think that's how they do it.
What made me laugh about that sequence, though, sorry to jump a little bit ahead, is that the air is kind of going out of the ship. It's going out of the ship, and everybody's going, I can't breathe very well. I can't breathe very well. They're not blacking out. They're just sort of struggling to breathe a little bit. And even the computer is struggling to breathe. The computer starts sounding like it's going to have like a heart attack or something. And then they plug the holes, and then all of a sudden the computer can speak fine again. Everybody else can speak fine again. It's instantly repressurized, even though it's a massive space. From where? I don't know. Where did they get the spare air from in this? I don't know. They just instantly repressurize it out of nowhere and then just kind of carry on. But then... Oh, no, if you guys want to say anything else about what happens next first, you probably should, because otherwise...
Well, on that note about the computer not being able to breathe, I think an apologist might say, well, this is a future where they have sufficiently advanced AI to the point where they can make computers relatable to humans.
Yes, but why would they in that instance? It's like the one point that you really need to have a computer be reliable, it starts going, I'm actually human. I'm feeling like you guys. Oh, come on. Oh, it's just awful. It's just awful. And also, the AI is the most monotonous AI ever. It's like they modelled it off of HAL, for fuck's sake. It's like they've given it no personality, or they've taken HAL 9000 and they've taken away all his inflections to the point where all you've got left is Windows speech to text thing, and somebody's just typing it in the comms room.
Yeah, it's 2020 for fuck's sake. But, I mean, I would be able to forgive so much more of this movie if they had Holly from Red Dwarf as the ship's computer.
That would be amazing, yeah. That would be absolutely awesome. So, yeah, what happens next, Nath?
Let's see. So, the ship is punctured. They fixed the puncture right on time to save Gary Sinise from dying. And Dr. Pepper saves the day, by the way.
Yeah, Dr. Pepper did it.
And thank you,
It must have been
Pepper.
that special blend.
And, but apparently they decided they don't have time to check the rest of the ship. Like, let's just keep going. We got it. Everything's green. And so they don't realize that a key area of the ship is still punctured and leaking out. And that causes their ship to crash.
But also, in that one bit, there's another bit that really annoyed me in that one particular piece where they're going, all right, I'm sending the fuel to the engines. And you can watch the fuel supply all the way along. Apparently, there's an indicator all the way along. It's moving really slowly down the pipe. And yet, when she's watching that thing, at no point does it say your pressure is low, even though the fuel is spewing outside the side of this pipe. There's at no point. And also, the fuel freezes instantly as soon as it goes into space. How does that happen? How the fuck is that supposed to... It turns into... It's as if... Have you ever seen those sequences in a film where somebody is pissing in the Arctic and their stream of piss freezes mid-flight and then it kind of cracks off? You know, it happens in quite a few sort of comedy films. And that's exactly what happened here. The spaceship was taking a piss and its piss stream froze and snapped off and just went flying. And then the engine blew up. You're like, okay. Right.
Yeah, on any real mission to Mars or on any real space mission where something like that happened and they fixed it, they would go to extreme lengths to check everything after they sealed up what they found.
Yeah, you wouldn't take any second chance if a system failure did happen on your way to Mars.
Yeah, and didn't they, was the excuse they had was, oh, we don't have time to check because we've got to catch this orbiting rover that's in order to, or am I missing something? Because that was before, no, that couldn't be the reason that they didn't check, because the whole reason they tried to connect up with that orbiting satellite thing was because their ship failed.
Yeah, which leads us on to one of, perhaps this is where most people will lose it at this movie. Have you got any basic understanding of physics and Newtonian mechanics? The next scene is just, like I say, you'll just lose the will to live watching it.
Yeah, so they have to ditch the spaceship completely and go out in their ERV suits and on their little umbilical cord. And they've got to try to catch an orbiting, what was it they called it? It's not a satellite.
It's Remo. Remo it was called. The resupply module.
Resupply module that's been orbiting Mars. And so ignoring for the moment the fact that they just happened to come to it at the right moment to catch it, they go out in their spacesuits hoping to catch it with their grappling hook and get onto it that way. But they fire up their... Oh, I'm blanking on... Yeah,
and I can't blame you, to be honest.
Well, I'm little retro film.
Essentially, Tim Robbins, he flies solo, like he takes the grapple with him, doesn't he, to get to the Remo. And he's going... Yeah, it's just completely nonsensical, because he goes and he's firing his rockets the whole way. Which is, everyone will say, you don't really need to do that. You just need to fire an initial thrust, and he could have just taken it and then just corrected himself to intercept us properly. But for some reason, he just puts his hand down on the thrust and just keeps it going. He's become the Jeremy Clarkson of spacewalks.
Yeah, this is where this is one of those moments that you mentioned earlier where Gary Sinise could have sacrificed himself, but didn't.
I have been thinking about that a little bit, because he would have to fire his thrusters constantly if he was trying to match the orbital velocity and orbit kind of path of that particular thing. But somehow they're already in the exact orbit of that thing anyway. They're almost geostationary with it. So in that instance, like you said,
he only needed just a few thruster fires here and there, and he could have probably eyeballed it and gotten pretty close to it to grapple it.
But the whole thing's so unlikely anyway.
But yeah, he manages to grapple it, but he tumbles off, doesn't he? And
because he's going 32 kilometers an hour, and which is way too fast, which is probably should have killed him on impact, actually.
Yeah, I mean, imagine trying to put a limpet onto a car when it's driving past at 32 miles an hour.
Yeah, and then he kind of falls off, but then he kind of slows down and he just stops. For no reason, when in actuality he should have still had momentum and just kept on going till he slammed into the surface of Mars or burned up. Can you burn up on the surface of Mars?
I don't know if it's thick enough, I'm not sure.
Yeah, but either one of those should have happened, but he stops and then he just says, I don't have enough fuel to go back. He says, yes, you don't need that much. Again, it's just... like, because his wife kind of comes after him, she uses up, he says, oh, you don't have enough, yeah, like... I'm trying to speed through this because if we explained everything that was going on, and because everything they do just makes no sense and wouldn't work like that anyway.
It's a very repetitive scene because
it's just not enough fuel. It says, well, you've been burning it constantly. You know what? It's your own bloody fault. You don't know fuel.
Yeah. So Commander Woody runs out of fuel, can't get back. There's not enough fuel for his wife to get there. She says, fuck it, I'm doing it anyway. She runs out of fuel. She shoots out her grappling hook. It's too short.
And then at that point, I'm saying, well, you said you didn't have enough fuel a second ago. Can't you just fire that little bit forward to get onto the grappling hook? He's even contradicting himself from a few seconds beforehand.
Yeah. She couldn't.
It could have all been very easily remedied, this situation, if they were human beings and could actually think about they actually knew what they were doing.
Apparently, to keep his wife from saving him, Commander Woody takes off his helmet and kills himself.
Yeah, and that's also a little bit because you don't freeze instantly in space because there's nothing for your heat to radiate onto. It's like space is cold, but it's not cold in the conventional sense we think of.
I actually read a calculation done by some scientists about how long it would take if you were to remove a space helmet in space. If you could actually survive up to, I think, 2 or 3 minutes before you die.
It's about 90 seconds, though, in which you would still be viable. You could still be alive after that.
I think
but
they
you
say
get all
like
your oxygen in your blood.
Yeah, you would have, if you exhaled all the breath out of your lungs and crunched up, you could survive about 2 minutes or so.
There is a film in which they do that, isn't there? But I can't remember what it is.
I think it's Event Horizon.
That's it. Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Because he's about to get blasted out there, and they tell him to crunch up and exhale all of. And that's a space horror film gets its science better than this thing.
Exactly.
Yeah, and that also happens in 2001: A Space Odyssey, where he has to shoot himself out the side of the ship into the other side of the ship.
Yeah. So it is possible to survive in space for a very short time and not suffer too badly from it. But is it like in this? I just pictured that it is instant, and for some reason he turns into Pinhead as well instantly.
Exactly. Yeah. That's interesting, actually, that we've come across Event Horizon, because I think if you took the introduction without the stupid sort of future barbecue bit from this film and stuck it right on the beginning of Event Horizon, right after they have the big stupid monster thing. Part of the same franchise. There you go. Boom.
Yeah, it could
Buddha,
be. Yeah,
alien Buddhas created a portal to hell. Boom. Sorted.
Yeah, and we'll get to that in a minute. Where
and also, can we just mention at this point, like you talked about scenes being repetitive, and that's the thing. This movie could have easily been a 45-minute one-off special. Because every scene is padded and padded and padded to such a ridiculous. Now, like I said, I like slow burning sci-fi but the cinematography is so bland. It's not even giving you the way it's filmed. You're getting fed information without knowing it. It's just they are really stretching every scene for what they can get.
Yeah, there's nothing happening, is there, really?
Yeah.
At all.
Like, that's the whole EV scene there. Like you said, it gets very repetitive. I don't have enough fuel. You don't have enough fuel. Oh, no. It just keeps going on and on like that.
Yeah, they have to pad out certain scenes. Like, for some reason, they have to establish that, what's her name?
Connie Nielsen's character, isn't it?
Hold on a second.
I can't remember the character's name.
Terry Fisher. They have to establish over and over again that she likes to dance a lot.
Because I don't know why. That's because he can't dance either, but that never pays off in any kind of way later on, I think.
They had to say that same line twice, too. That same joke used twice. If I don't need to learn how to dance, I just want to grab your butt.
Yeah, it doesn't lead to anything later on. Like, you think that must, in some weird way, tie in, but it just doesn't.
Yeah, as I was watching it for the first time, I was like, okay, that's probably going to be foreshadowing of something. Nope. And I also thought that scene in the very beginning when Luke was talking to his little kid about reading book in space at the same time he's reading on Earth, I was like, oh, they're going to use that for some emotionally heavy scene at the end, but nope.
No, that's right. There's so many dead ends. You're right.
Like, they set up all these things and they just don't contribute anything to the story anyway. I think after that we've kind of exhausted that scene. I say it's just a marvel to behold of how movies can just. And like I say, it's because this movie, it sets up that these characters are real world scientists, but they don't seem to, like, any of them should have grasped the fundamentals of Newtonian mechanics if they were all trained to do EVs.
Also, though, we haven't quite gone through that particular scene fully yet, because they did actually say, if I remember correctly, on their way towards that module, that orbiting module, is that we won't all be able to fit inside. And yet she still tries to rescue the one guy who makes it possible.
Oh, I missed that. Did they actually say that?
Yeah. And so she tries to rescue him. Yeah.
Well, now I remember, but they did have the explanation that Eyebrows Man is going to have to throw out a bunch of the cargo.
Oh, right, okay, right. It's not made for human descent. It was never made to go back down onto the planet with people in it anyway.
If they wanted, and here's the thing, if they wanted to pad out the movie, why couldn't they come up with some interesting thing about the landing itself?
Yeah.
Instead,
but they didn't show that. That was out of budget. Come on, it's like the launch of the ship in the first place.
Yeah, because they could have had the Gary Sinise character trying to figure out, how am I going to land this with all this excess weight, and then that could have been a tense scene to do, but
instead they just cut straight to the surface where they set up a flag, the American flag.
And that's, like I said, and no one can explain why are they putting a flag up. They're not the first they are. It serves no and why did they have a flag in the Remo anyway?
I don't think it was in the Remo. I think, now, I might be wrong on this, but I think they just arrived at the base camp, which they'd somehow managed to get to despite not having any kind of landing plan.
No, I don't think they were at the base camp at that point.
I think that was when they were walking into it, wasn't it? And they picked up the flag because it had been like knocked over by the storm or the planet or something like that. I think so.
Again, that's something they should have set up earlier. They should have shown that flag getting knocked down. But I got the impression, where the hell did they get that flag? Who was carrying that? Why would you put that in a Remos? This just implying Americans can't function if they don't have a flag to fly nearby them.
But still, they don't know if they've got any oxygen where they're going, and yet they still take time out to put up a fucking American flag because they're idiots.
No, I have a theory about that. I think the reason that scene is there is because the studio wanted to make sure that Americans weren't offended by the World Space Station.
Yeah, that be reminded. Yeah, it is the World Space Station, even though it's nearly all Americans everywhere. Well, that is the world to some Americans, isn't it, Nathan? Yeah. See, that's good. We can't really offend you making these comments. Yeah. So now they managed to get to the habitat where.
Sorry, habitant. Get it right.
Is it the habitant?
It's a habitant.
All right. No, so I was watching Red Planet last night, and they call it the habitat. So.
Yeah, no, it is a habitat. I was just taking the piss because it's like half tent.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
they call it the hab in The Martian as well.
But yeah, that's when they bump into Don Cheadle, and it's quite bizarre that Eyebrows Man is surprised that Don Cheadle is a bit unhinged after seeing all of his crewmates die and living completely on his own on an alien planet for I don't know how many months. He's like, what's wrong with him? Is it? And they explain to him, he's in shock. I said, surely they would be expecting this, if they're survivors. They might be a little bit not all they are.
I don't think Eyebrows Man was actually surprised. That's just how he looks.
just that weird kind of blank expression he has constantly. But yeah, it's just why is he asking this, or is that just for the audience's sake? But I think the audience could figure out why Don Cheadle would be a little bit. Yeah, his marbles wouldn't all be there.
Yeah, but he recovers pretty fucking quickly, doesn't he? He does well. It's like 1 minute he's got space madness, next minute he's fine and he's had a shave. Where did he get a fucking razor from for a shave? He's so clean shaven. Gillette could have made an advert, but they missed a chance because there was no product placement for Gillette in there at all.
That would have been a great product placement opportunity. But the thing is, he's been stranded by himself on Mars for 1 year. And I mean, I guess it's kind of understandable that you would want to shave when you're in the company of other people. But
yeah, and probably, it would make sense that that's the first people you've seen or had any sort of contact with in a year.
Yeah, but he's gone insane to at least a small extent, but he's like all better a few minutes later.
Just because Gary Sinise remembers his family or something like that.
Well, no, he just kind of snaps out of his weird spiritual state and becomes all scientific again as soon as they show up.
Yeah, that's it. And yeah, the other thing to point out is while they're in this tent, the tent is flapping outside, which again we've pointed out already why any wind on Mars is negligible. And
it was the thinnest material ever, wasn't it? It wasn't a proper canvas. It couldn't have been airtight, which apparently it was. And it was so thin, it was like they made it out of kite material.
Although there is a scene in The Martian, remember when the hab there, when the tunnel kind of blows off later on, and he does seal it up, and I think it is possible on Mars to do that.
What, with gaffer tape?
I mean, they say that you could actually do that on Mars because the atmosphere is so thin.
But the atmosphere in this tent apparently was enough to people to breathe perfectly normally. Oh, because they only had plants in there, didn't they? And then they had some sort of, was it an oxygen generator in the back, which was just some sort of fancy lava lamp or something? And
yeah, he says that the plants take in his CO2 and give him oxygen, and he gets food out of them. So
where he gets the other gases from is
I'm sure someone's probably figured out how much plants he would need to survive a whole year there.
Yeah, I know Andy Weir's figured it out, because in the Martian novel, there's literally hundreds of pages of explanations for everything he would need and everything he would have to do.
Oh yeah, well, yeah. In The Martian, there's actually, even in the movie, there's a scene where the Matt Damon character speaks to the camera and explains the potatoes and how much he needs and what he would have to ration himself to, and it just seems like a few potted plants round about Don Cheadle there.
I think watching this, I thought to myself that Andy Weir must have been at least partly inspired by this movie, but he made it more scientifically respectable.
I think Andy Weir took a good long look at the history of Marge movies and just decided, I'm going to try and fix this. Because since Capricorn 1 onwards, Marge movies were all horrifically bad. And it was The Martian really saved Marge's reputation.
Oh, come on. John Carter on Mars was amazing and completely realistic.
And Ghosts of Mars. Huh? Yeah,
I was about to mention Ghosts of Mars.
Was that the Ice Cube one where they're like all just walking around?
Ice Cube and Bon Jovi on Mars.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, there you go.
There was another series of films that were completely unscientific called Martian Chronicles. Have you ever seen that?
Those were movies? I know they were a book by Ray Bradbury.
There were movies or a TV show. I remember watching part of it. It was quite weird. Very 70s.
Now, John Carter on Mars, I love the books that were written back in the early 20th century. Those are amazing books, but they're fantasy. They're not sci-fi. And so I can forgive that.
Tote sci-fi, man. Tote sci-fi.
Yeah, but it's quite strange saying that how the sci-fi novels on Mars all tend to be really good, but all the movies have been horrendous. Like there's the Kim Stanley Robinson Mars trilogy, which is fantastic as well. And it just seems that The Martian was that kind of reversed the trend of Mars movies. At least we haven't.
I mean, I got to say about John Carter, it is fantasy because it doesn't actually involve space travel of any kind. There's no spaceships.
It's totally science. I completely disagree. It's complete science. It's real. It's there. I will get there one day. Don't you break my dreams, man.
Oh, okay.
So this is...
Really get it.
I don't know how far into the movie this is, because in terms of things that have happened, it feels like you're still only 10 minutes into the film, but it's like 50 minutes has elapsed at this point.
It's taken forever. Yeah, it's like, can you just get down there already? I want to see more monsters. I want to see more people torn the fuck up.
This is where we get to what's been going on Mars, and it pretty much gets dumber and dumber by the second.
So what happens is Luke Graham, Don Cheadle's character, has a computer program that he made that isolates the. So it's like the sound wave version, like he's like translating some kind of the sound that the mountain is emanating. He's translating that into some kind of code and comparing it to DNA or something.
Why he did that? Where he got the idea from to do that? I don't know.
It's like because he figured this sounds coming out in batches of threes, and so it's XYZ coordinates, and then he figured out, it's actually the double helix. I don't know how he kind of reached he just says that that's the conclusion he's reached, and they just accept him at his word. They don't double check.
What wavelength is the sound coming out at anyway?
If this had been a proper scientific crew, they would have all sat down and kind of cross-referenced and checked each other's work to make sure. But no, they just accept Don Cheadle.
Yeah, but months of peer review doesn't translate well into an exciting movie, so...
What wavelength was that sound coming out at? Because it was audible on the planet in very little atmosphere.
Yeah, they could hear it. They could all, but then they say it's and then he shows the map of the DNA, and they look at the DNA, and is it Corey Nielsen takes one look and say, but it's 2 chromosomes short, this DNA strand, which is, yeah.
Doesn't it make zero sense to talk about mitochondria being connected to DNA?
We really need Kitch here to explain this in more depth. Yeah, but the general thing that this DNA strand lacks 2 chromosomes, that's bollocks, basically. The main reason being that DNA doesn't have chromosomes, so yeah, that's... Yeah,
DNA is just it's not a physical thing, it's just a code embedded in mitochondria, or I might be getting the science completely wrong there, but...
DNA is just basically what makes up the chromosomes, in a way. So yeah, it's just, but yeah, because then I think that I can't read the dialogue is so bad after this because they're just kind of saying things, and I think they're saying it so quick so that the audience doesn't really twig on to what they're saying.
Oh, I don't think
Because they said, it's only 3% different to humans, and they say, there's only 3% difference between us and chimps, and that 3% is what gives you Einstein and all these other people. And says, what? Yeah, that's all you could say. Yeah. So eventually, Gary Sinise again just comes up with a solution on his own, and he says, well, if we send back this will fill in the gap in the transmission, and then. Yeah, they send it back and the transmission stops. And it's the alleged face on Mars that suddenly becomes white, doesn't it?
Yeah, I was surprised that they went for that.
Yeah. Well, it was already because it was uncovered, wasn't it, after the initial sequence?
That was in the late 90s, so it's not too surprising at the time.
Okay, I always thought that the face on Mars phenomenon and the whole excitement over that was way earlier, like in the 80s.
I'm pretty sure, Jen, it was the 90s, wasn't it, the face on Mars?
The Face on Mars was Richard C. Hoagland, and it was way back when. It wasn't just the 90s. I think it was 70s when the first pictures came in. It might even be in the 60s. When the first pictures came in from the first probe that was sent to have a look at Mars, that's when the first sort of face of Mars thing came, because they were very low resolution and the shadows made it look as if there was a face.
But yeah, I think they did kick up again in the 90s, kind of with the X-Files and all that.
And I think, once again, Richard C. Hoagland pounced on that, and he was doing talks on that back then as well. Hoagland, for anyone who doesn't know who he is, he's the one who thinks that the rings of Saturn were made by giant aliens. There are giant glass structures all over the moon. So, yeah, that tells you the level of stupid involved in that. But, yeah, that was uncovered already by the point that they went down there. And they came around a corner and it's like, oh, look at that, it's amazing. And then...
and it's at this point, I think Gary Sinise also deducts that the earlier storm was because they responded to the waves in the wrong way and the system defended itself, which kind of doesn't make sense when... it's aliens and they're meant to be friendly aliens, so why they would have a violent protection system, given what the ending seems to spell out, just makes no sense.
Yeah, and also when they weren't sending anything out, were they? They were using, what was it, sonar?
It was just a puzzle that was meant to be solved.
No, I mean, the people, with the technology that they were using, it was just like a sonar, so it was just bouncing. I mean, you'd get radio waves like that anyway, so why didn't it just go off all the time like some sort of dodgy car alarm?
But yeah, you know what I mean? But given that with the aliens, that they surely would have been more beneficial for the aliens and that, just to have no response if it's the wrong one, and then it'd be ignored.
It seemed pretty impenetrable, didn't it? It didn't seem like the kind of thing you'd be able to walk up to and just kind of, And also, if the top had been covered up properly, no fucker would have known it was there anyway, so they wouldn't have investigated. Why didn't they just do a proper job of covering up their stupid little temple?
But, as I said, it's going to get dumber still now.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I wanted to mention that every time the Space Buddha has to attack everything that's not human, when it gets some radiation reading that's not correct or whatever, it has to bring out its dune smoke monster thingy every time. So it has to... Does that mean it has to rebuild the mountain over itself every time?
Well, it must do, I suppose. Unless it was just a one-trick thing. Again, so the next time around, it doesn't matter anymore.
Yeah, so the face has gone white, so they decide, of course, to walk out there, but there's a storm incoming, and that's the filmmakers introducing a ticking clock for the hell of it, to give some kind of semblance of suspense to the whole proceedings coming up. And so Eyebrows Man, he stays with the module, doesn't he? And so it's, Gary Sinise, Connie Nielsen, and Don Cheadle decide to walk into the head. And this is, like I said, it really gets it kind of goes from seriously to just plain silly after this.
Yeah, so they walk into the face, and the face closes up behind them.
Yeah, and it's a pure white room at first, so it's basically they walk into an Apple store. It's sterile and devoid of life, just like an Apple store. Sorry, I've got to slag off Apple, so...
But where was that stolen from? What other kind of sci-fi-esque film have you seen?
The Matrix. The Matrix.
Way before The Matrix.
2001. It's got something like that as well. Yeah, at the end of 2001, he wakes up in a kind of sterile environment like that.
The one that I was thinking of was Abyss. Do you remember when the guy enters the structure at the bottom of the abyss? And then all the water is removed, and all of a sudden he's in this room, and then you see the aliens afterwards. And that's what I felt like it was stolen from that, pretty much.
Anyway, yeah, because this is where another thing that happens is, for some reason, they've got these atmospheric readers on their wrists, which doesn't make sense, and why they would be sent out when they know what Mars' atmosphere. I mean, were they just in case you encounter aliens, this might come in handy. Yeah, unless it's just to make sure, like if they're in the hab, that it's okay for them. I mean, that's the only reason I can think they would carry these things. And surely then just some equipment in the hab would be better for that than them all carrying these things. But they walk, the door closes behind them and they look, and it's actually close up of this. It's not a tiny little detail it says 54% nitrogen and 6 psi air pressure.
Yeah,
and
that was
they actually say it's air, it's breathable, and so they say no, it's not air.
Did they not have a good science advisor to tell them the composition of air? That seems pretty basic.
And because what it makes this even worse still is Gary Sinise decides, well, I'm going to take my gloves off, because that seems to be a trope in bad science fiction. Now, that if they find anything resembling a breathable atmosphere, they just have to take their helmets off instantly and just, fuck pathogens or any kind of being in an alien environment like that. But no, he takes it off, and Connie Nielsen actually runs and says, no, it's not 12 psi in here. Even though they went to the effort of showing a close-up of the display saying 6 psi not 20 seconds before that.
Yeah, and then when she sees that Gary Sinise is okay, they all start taking their helmet off, and she's like, wait, I haven't checked for trace elements or anything. But then she's like, oh, fuck it.
Yeah.
Well, that's more than what Prometheus did. They didn't even have a line saying, oh, we didn't check. They just do it anyway.
Well, in that sort of a situation, would you really go, oh, fuck it. Oh no, the boat is sinking. I haven't even checked if the lifeboats work. Fuck it. Let's just get in it. Oh no, somebody's drilled holes in it.
Well, I mean, you can kind of understand where they're coming from. I mean, don't you ever have moments where you just want to get out of your clothes as soon as possible?
Yeah, but there's air outside when I do it.
And yeah, so at this point, a side door opens in the Apple store.
And they get a virtual reality tour of the solar system.
Yeah, which is nowhere near to scale.
No, it's terrible. Yeah, it is like something from Windows 98. Awful.
But that's even better than what the aliens look like. So they're getting this, and it's basically, Gary Sinise just does a running commentary on what's happening, because even though it's quite plain and obvious, I think the filmmaker, then people are just going to need this highly complex thing explained to them.
Yeah. It really dumbs down the viewers. It's like, hey, those are woolly mammoths.
That's Mars, and it had life on it. Oh, look, an asteroid hit it and they died. Oh, dear.
But they didn't die, did they? Because that's one of the other stupid things about it. This giant, like, world-ending, moon-sized asteroid, like another planet, hits Mars. The entire surface is immediately scoured completely, yet all the aliens are fine, and they lift off from every single possible position on Mars in sunflower seed-shaped ships and fuck off. They're all fine, every single one of them. Apart from one.
Yeah, the one stays behind, and the rest go and seeds Earth with something, DNA or
and
something.
This is going to be the most monumentally dumb plan. I mean, like Jen said, I would actually question whether this was real or not, whether this was a giant prank at this point. If these scientists had any clue, they would just be, no, this is bullshit.
These aliens are supposed to be super advanced in technology and knowledge, and supposedly are supposed to know how, I mean, presumably they should know how evolution works, and they should understand that it's a random process driven by mutation and natural selection, and it's completely unpredictable in every way. But
because it goes to the effort of showing they just seeded and then they left, they didn't do anything else. And so just to actually kind of break it down, so the aliens seeded human life on Earth so that we would go back to Mars, find the Apple store and make contact with them.
Did they seed human life, though? I just thought they seeded, like, some form of life.
Seeded life in the oceans, which then became human, which they were expecting for some reason to come back. And apparently the bison the mammoths turns into bisons from fish.
You know what? They must have been expecting humans or planting some human-type biological information, because they set up their test specifically to test for humans.
Yeah, but that didn't make any sense either, did it? Because, I mean, if they had been watching, like, the birth of humanity and all that kind of stuff throughout the entire history of Earth, which they kind of did and kind of didn't, they weren't really paying attention properly. But, they would have then known that humans were the only species on the planet that could have possibly come to Mars anyway, rendering the entire experiment, the entire test, completely pointless. Why didn't they just fly it and go, right, you're ready now, we've been watching you for about 3 billion years, we'll come down and pick you up? Why did they have to go to fucking Mars in the first place?
The only way they could possibly justify the whole test thing is if there's some elaborate, convoluted backstory involving some other alien species from outside the solar system that keeps trying to break in or something.
Or unless the only thing they could have explained is that they've seeded it on so many other planets, they were just waiting to see which one would come back. But again, why are they bothering with this long con? And also, by the time and by this time, they'll have evolved as well. That's the other. They won't resemble anything like what they are in that. And would they even remember doing this after 3 billion years?
Yeah, because the aliens do look like jelly babies designed by Jean-Paul Gaultier. They look terrible.
It's like that $20 bill you leave in your trench coat pocket and forget about for months on end, and then you find it and you're like, oh, hey, cool, $20.
I like how you said that. Your $20 bill that you keep in your trench coat.
Maybe that's what their whole thing was. Like, they just wanted a fun little game to play. And hey, wouldn't it be cool if we put our favorite seeded our favorite life form, and then billions of years later they came back to us and we could play with them? Or
yeah, but there's so many reasons why this. It's because. Did they not factor in possible extinction events and all this kind of stuff?
Why not just set up the test for any kind of intelligence? Like if some intelligence figures out how to open it up, then that could be like the litmus test. But it's also like
the puzzle is that their DNA, their genome is only 3% different to humans. So they seeded the life, and all this evolutionary change over 3 billion years only was a 3% change over all the time going through all those forums that led to us. That's the other thing. It's just, this isn't. Yeah, you cannot, there's no one that could make any argument for this ending making any sense whatsoever.
How, when they were flying off into space at the end of it, I don't know how they managed to get up there anyway, but they're flying off into space, and then the like face stroke sunflower seed ship narrowly misses them as if it's trying to fucking knock them out of the sky, and then flies off towards this apparently incredibly brilliant and bright and massive galaxy that you can see in the sky.
Oh, you know what? That bothered me a lot because it looked like the very closing scene, it looked like we were supposed to be looking at the Milky Way galaxy as if somehow they're outside the Milky Way galaxy and not in it.
Or they're going to another galaxy.
But regardless of what galaxy it was, you would never see it that massive and bright in the sky. Even Andromeda in like maybe however many years that was supposed to be in the future, 20 years in the future. I mean, it wouldn't be that close for billions of years to come. So, and then they go, oh, there he goes, safe trip. And you're like, yeah, safe trip to you. Fuck off and die. Just burn up in the atmosphere already or something.
But then there's also the other thing. If a galaxy was that visible, wouldn't we be suffering kind of violent kind of gravitational disturbances if we could actually see a spiral galaxy?
Oh yeah,
that close to Earth.
I mean, Andromeda and Milky Way are going to collide in however long, billions of years from now.
But by the time Andromeda is kind of visible in any, like, to the naked eye like it is in that movie, there'll be serious problems in the solar system.
Yeah,
but it was already that big. It was already that big in the story that the aliens told, which was, what was that, billions or millions of years before? It must have been millions of years.
So NASA have completely not noticed this kind of very plain,
giant thing.
This big spiral galaxy hanging around in the sky. I think it's on a lot of the page said all it would be a tiny pinprick of light you'd be heading towards, but they needed a grand ending, so. Yeah, and then one more thing about the Apple Store. I'm just going to refer to that, but how is this kept powered for 3 billion years? And it's transmitting a radio signal, it's maintaining a life support, it's got the holograms ready to go for when someone finally, it's got a ship ready that's still in perfect working order for Gary Sinise. It's got all these things. What the hell is powering this, and how did they build it to last so long?
Probably water. It's probably powered by water. You know, like these conspiracy theorists say that you can power everything from water, and it's just the government trying to pretend that you can't. You know, water and ceramic membranes. That's all it's powered by, definitely. Question answered.
Yeah, but no, it doesn't. Just makes no sense at all. Like I say, everything in this movie even at like most kind of movies like this, I would say, yeah, if you take a second look at it, it breaks down, but this just breaks down on the surface level completely. You don't even have to analyse it that much to be kind of tearing your hair out of it. Yeah, so that's it. It ends. Gary Sinise gets in the spaceship and disappears to go and party with a very badly rendered alien.
I was half hoping that scene where he's being covered in water, that would be a drowning scene. Like, gotcha. We were JK. We were really wanting to kill you for our lab experiments.
Bizarrely enough, that is probably the one scene that has got some kind of probably one of the more realistic scenes. That's one of the ideas I think it's been developed for, traveling at really high velocities, like in deep space, is to come up with a breathing fluid so the pressure on the body, on the, the lungs and all that it doesn't stress your body so much. That is actually something that's been investigated. So, I mean, that's actually the most credible part of this film.
And again, just like the White Room, stolen from Abyss.
I think there is actually breathing fluid and has been used in short bursts on people. That people haven't.
I don't know if there's any truth in this deep sea version of it. I mean, once again, in Abyss, that's what they use because they're at that kind of a pressure. They say that the air pressure is too compressible, so they have to put a liquid in there. Otherwise, the suits would actually implode, and that's why they use a fluid instead of a gas.
Yeah, and I think it's also kind of the bones and all that. So, well, it's also like I said, liquid. You can't compress a liquid. So, but yeah, I think that we've come to the end of it. I think we're coming to the end of our sanity with this film now.
We just need to forget about it. We need to, has anyone got any strong alcohol?
Not to hand.
Yeah, same here.
I think I might somewhere. Damn it.
But yeah, I think we can wrap it up. Yeah, so that's Mission to Mars. It's awful. It's not even good or enjoyable awful. It's just infuriating awful.
All right, I guess we're ready to wrap up on that note. And thank you for listening. And we'll be, at the time this episode comes out, the next episode following this one should be the Doctor Who episode.
Yep, but everything, we time warp everything now, so yeah, it's quite suitable. The next one could be Doctor. It just depends on the schedules. It could change. We don't know when. But yeah, I think the next one we're going to record, I don't know if it'll air after this, is Doctor Who.
I'm looking at the schedule now. So doing it on a weekly basis makes it a little bit easier to figure out what's next, because the next one is always the next one we're doing anyway.
But doing it in backlog means it's sometimes kind of confusing knowing which one's getting released at which time.
Yeah. And so, as I said, that was our show. Thanks for listening. Does anybody have anything clever to end on? My brain cells are gone right now, so I can't think of anything clever.
You're a chromosome short, Nathan. You know that.
There we go. Got it.
Yeah, perfect. Right. Spot on.
All right, bye, everyone.
See ya. I'm going to eat some Skittles. Bye.
Thank you for listening to Trolling with Logic. If you enjoy this podcast, please consider leaving us a review on iTunes. If you love the show, please consider becoming a patron on Patreon. Supporting us at $5 or more per episode will get you access to exclusive, patron-only bonus content, early access to shows before everyone else, and other incentives. We are an amateur production, but with your patronage, we can help improve our audio quality and cover the costs for doing the show. We are grateful for anything you can pledge to the show. Go to www.patreon.com/trollingwithlogic to sign up if you are so inclined. We want to thank our 4 patrons who currently have chosen to support us. These patrons are Microbloganism, Josh at the Society for the Advancement of Science, Avinash Kumar, and Brian Curran. Thank you very much for your support, which is helping us out. If you have any suggestions for topics or guests you would like to hear on this show, let us know on Twitter or on our Facebook page. Thanks again for listening. Who gets where first. So they kind of try to go for the United Earth theme, kind of the...
Yeah, did you notice on that space station, it's got that kind of a ring for centrifugal gravity simulation. But when they're actually walking along that ring, in the distance you see like a bit that's curved up, but the rest of it is entirely flat. They didn't even bother to make it look as if they were actually walking around the inside of that big ring, because they realised that presumably it'd be too expensive. So everything is flat, apart from one kind of picture in the distance where it's kind of going upwards a little bit. That annoyed me as well.
Yeah, that's tiny details compared to what's going to come later.
Oh, and I know, but from that very point onwards, things were irking me big time.
Yeah, so the first big what the fuck moment comes when they get some kind of, or they see a geothermal column and they rule out volcanic eruption as the cause of the extrusion they see. And so one of the guys, Phil, who Jen refers to as Eyebrows Man.
Yeah, Eyebrows Man.
He's like, there can't be ice. The only other thing it could be is ice, but there can't be ice in this latitude unless... And then they all realize that there's water there or something.
Yeah, because they didn't even look and they go, oh, it's shiny, it must be water, without even checking. They're like, what? Yeah,
so they go out to the location, and this weird living tornado thing that's kind of like a cross between the dune worm and the smoke monster from Lost kind of pops out of the ground or pops out of the top of a mountain and eats them.
And vacuums them all up, doesn't it? Shreds them.
I did like the sequence of the guy spinning around so fast that he just liquidates.
But it's set up this whole sort of thing. It's like, this is what you can expect in the rest of the movie. It's like, oh, brilliant. So we're going to have some really kind of cool monsters, and there might be some interesting...
And we have Don Cheadle as character Luke Graham, family man who's going into space. And then Woody Blake's wife, Terry Fisher, played by Connie Nielsen. And then, of course, you get the dramatic entrance of Gary Sinise as Jim McConnell. And Gary Sinise is kind of the typical tortured working man scientist. And
yeah, he's meant to be the kind of protagonist that we're meant to identify with, I think.
Because his wife died and he went through some psychological problems, and so he was pulled from his mission, and it was given to his friend Luke instead. And they go into some expository heavy dialogue that really wouldn't happen in real life, but we got to know the story. So they have this weird dialogue that would be weird in real life if they were really talking that way.
Yeah, at a barbecue, socializing, talking like this.
Everything is normal, isn't it? It's like, it's meant to be in the future, but everything is normal apart from whoever drives up that like futuristic looking ish car that sounds like it's got a bank of hairdryers in it. And then that's like the only future. That's the only thing saying, oh, we're in the future. And then everything else is just normal. They tried
to make some explanatory notes here and there, like when Luke tells Woody, oh, hey, your car belongs in a museum.
And he's got a standard, like, what was that? It was some sort of a sports car, wasn't it? A convertible.
Internal combustion, baby. Internal combustion. Oh, yeah. And so yeah, they then the next scene after that, they're on Mars, and Jim McConnell and Woody and Terry are back orbiting Earth, monitoring the mission from the World Space Station. So apparently in this world, the Earth has kind of come together and created a world space station. So there's no more of this international conflict over.
In that sort of a situation, would you really go, oh, fuck it. Oh no, the boat is sinking. I haven't even checked if the lifeboats work. Fuck it. Let's just get in it. Oh no, somebody's drilled holes in it.
Well, I mean, you can kind of understand where they're coming from. I mean, don't you ever have moments where you just want to get out of your clothes as soon as possible?
Yeah, but there's air outside when I do it.
And yeah, so at this point, a side door opens in the Apple store.
And they get a virtual reality tour of the solar system.
Yeah, which is nowhere near to scale.
No, it's terrible. Yeah, it is like something from Windows 98. Awful.
Hello and welcome to another exciting edition of Trolling with Logic, the podcast where we review bad movies, good movies, smack things that we need to have smacked, and that's one of these episodes.
That sounded very BDSM, but carry on.
Yeah. I think this film's had an effect on you, Nathan. You're struggling for words at the moment.
You just sound like you want to dish out some punishment today.
I'm just trying to mix up the intro because I think the intro, every time I say the same intro, it sounds more cheesy every time I say it. So
no, it's cool. You go for it. Sounds good.
Yeah, we're reviewing a movie called Skittles in Space,
also called Mission to Don Cheadles Tent.
Yeah, Mission to Mars. It sounds like the title is a nice generic sounding, innocent sounding title, but this movie threw me for a loop because I went into it fresh because I had never seen it before.
Yeah, I remember seeing it I didn't see it in the cinema. I saw it on DVD a few years later because I used to rent out a lot of DVDs from Blockbuster, and it was just there used to be a period where just nothing good would come out on DVD, so you would go to the further away shelves to see the movies that would just cost like £2 to rent out for a month or something. And that was one of them, and I decided to give this a go, along with its counterpart, the well-known Red Planet movie, which, that should be mentioned because it was the year 2000 and there was 2 Mars movies released months after each other. I think the studios got into competition with each other over that, and basically, both movies they're terrible, to put it lightly.
It's a theme that the Asylum have kept going with their films, trying to release them before the main film. I think that's where they got their idea from. You know how there's been a few of these. This was like 2012, and then there was another one that came out in the same year as well. Same kind of disaster film, different studio. And then the Asylum, of course, have now done it. So every single time a big blockbuster like disaster film comes out, the Asylum will bring one out too. Amazing series. We need to review one of them one of these days. Definitely.
Yeah, definitely.
Bloodstorm, Nazis at the center of the earth. I will keep pressing the point.
Yeah, I've seen that. It's great. It's not as good as it's not as good as Iron Sky though.
Well, anyway,
probably the strangest thing with this film is when you read the details on paper before you watch it, you think this could actually be fairly watchable and enjoyable sci-fi movie. The director's Brian De Palmas. It's got Don Cheadle, Tim Robbins, Gary Sinise, and the score's done by Enrico Morricone, who done many classic scores. And the thing is, and nothing works. It's like they all turned up and no one, that was it. Everyone just turned up and got their paychecks and went home. It's kind of a zero effort film in every respect.
Yeah. I mean, the reviews, if you look on IMDb as well, are just what the fuck? Some people are singing its praises, saying it's like, it is a thinking person's sci-fi. I'm like, yeah, it's a sci-fi for somebody who's thinking about something completely different when they watch it. It's just terrible. Yeah,
because there was one of our commenters pointed, well, and this is usually a defense you get of these films, well, it's, just a kind of, it's not meant to be, because I know we're going to get heavily into the science of it, and it's, the excuse people go, oh, you're not meant to think of it that deeply.
It's a sci-fi.
So, yeah, it's sci-fi. I think this commenter, I'm not slagging him off, but he just said, oh, it's not a peer-reviewed science, but just don't take it so seriously.
I know, but they've got to get something right.
You can ignore this, but this whole film is set up and the characters are meant to be scientists and it's sort of based in the real world. And when all that happens and all the errors just keep accumulating, it's difficult to kind of not notice this after a while. If it's logical and consistent within its own world, you can overlook. That's how we're able to watch Star Wars and enjoy. But with this, it's not logical and consistent within its own world.
No, because it's trying to do science. It is trying to do science at various different points. It's trying to deal with themes of space. And if it's trying to deal with themes of space, it's at least got to get basic physics right. And it doesn't even do that. It's terrible. Anyway, Roundtable. Nathan, what
Nathan, you're usually... All right, that's okay. I was going to say, Nathan, you're the one that usually runs us through the plot, so I think we can get to the plot now.
Okay, so it's the year 2020, and it starts out in a place called Dickinson, Texas. I don't know if that's a real place or not, but there's a party going on right before the launch to Mars, and you kind of get an overview of the main cast of characters. There's Tim Robbins, who plays a guy called Woody Blake, the commander of the mission.